Hello, everybody. I'm going to pause recording. Oh, thank you so much, Juliana. You know, the thing that drives me nuts, I used to have this big red glowing dot when I'm recording. You know, I don't know why they changed the interface. And now there's a tiny one. I have to look all over to find it. So I missed a whole class recently. Luckily, it was a review. So we did all right. Okay, let's take a look. Let's see what we've got. So again, remember, I'm very much on your side when things are awesome. I'm very much on your side when they're not. All right. So I took a peek earlier and I saw some strange things that was nobody's fault. One person's really fine project was upside down. It was weird. I downloaded it. It was fine when I downloaded it. It was just upside down in Google Drive. How weird is that? So I did that person a favor and I made a different format for them. I turned it into a PDF. So a few of you had weird issues that are inexplicable. I'm not going to blame you. I fixed as many as I could. All right, let's see what we've got. Let me just make sure I refresh this. I just want to make sure it's current. All right, here we go. So, you know, you got to give Samuel credit. I mean, the thing does have impact right off the bat. I mean, how can you not look at this? You know, I think it's kind of beautiful. Sam, you should feel really good about this. Sammy, where are you? Are you here today? Come on.
Yeah, hi.
Oh, there you are. All right. You got to feel really good about this. I mean, for one, it just gets your attention. You know, here's my model for if things have impact. This is a New Yorker thing to say if there ever was one. You know, you get off the train, you're late, right? You don't want to look at the posters at all, right? You're passing the posters on the way out, but one or two of them makes you stop anyway. That's what we want. We want enough impact to stop someone when they're late in New York City. So I think he's got it. You know, and a couple things about this I have to point out because they're just so interesting and somewhat eccentric. Um, Sam, here in Spirited Smith, I love eccentric, by the way. You know, if I ever say something's good but expected, that's not really big praise for me. But if I say, wow, is this kind of nutty? That's like, yeah. So this is what I think so nutty. The frames. He used the frames, but the artwork is escaped entirely. It's almost like, you know, that lily was in the box, but it just wasn't, you know, it was a freewheeling lily and it just decided to take off. And the same thing for the rose and the same thing for the tulip. The sheer nerve to hide that much text with the flowers, you know, that we can't even see it. And, you know, I'm sure that would make a lot of people nervous. Like, can I really do that? Gosh, you look at Vogue magazine, the model is hiding the name of the magazine half the time. You know, it's like a V and an E, you know, behind her head. And they're just showing that, you know, we're so famous, you know, you'll figure out who it is. But I have to say, this is beautiful. Sam, I want to ask you something for everybody's sake. I'm just sort of curious, and maybe others are curious. What tools did you find yourself using most for the drawings?
Mostly the pencil. Um, I have a drawing tablet, so it's a bit easier. Almost entirely the pencil.
Wow. So that's kind of interesting. You know, one thing that I just don't have time today, but I really regret not showing you last time. When you're at, you know, I love the pencil tool, by the way. I use it a lot. I'm just so used to the touchpad and the mouse. I do have a drawing tablet, but frankly, I don't really use it much for illustration. I use it for animation, mostly. But I do love the pencil tool and the brush tool, which are both freehand tools. The pen tool coming up is not. Um, uh, so yeah, so Sam definitely looks like had an advantage with that. We'll talk more about it as we move forward. But I have to say, I draw with the touchpad most of the time, and you just get used to it. Beautiful work. I really don't have any revisions for you. One of the things I'm a little surprised by is that battleship gray background actually works. You know what I'm saying? I'd be usually very hesitant to use something that's like that, kind of neutral. And I think I see why. He wanted the lighter colors and the brighter colors and the chromatic colors to be shown off. And it really does work. Really well done. What I like most about it is just so nervy, the layout. The separate drawings are fine, but that's not really the thing that makes it special. It's the strange and unusual layout. I don't get trapped anywhere. The scales on his side, huge rows in the middle, huge R. You know, scale is a big element here. Scale meaning not everything's the same size. There's a big variety of size. Very well done.
Thank you. It's a lot of fun.
Okay. All right. So this one also has gone very, very well. Like you have to appreciate the way the page was laid out. You know, it's really Laura. Just want to see, where are you, Laura? Can you wave at me, Laura? Really nice work. You know, and you know the thing that I like about it, she just bravely like broke out of the grid. You know, really early on, just about everybody was working in rows, and some of you did a great job that way. But Laura didn't want to do that, so she just sort of like busted out. You know, the page is hers. You know, I do want to say something to you, Laura, that we would, if we were going to press, right? Listen, don't redo it for this one thing, right? But in a more uptight class, you would have lost points because I asked for a margin and you didn't give me one. You know, there's no half-inch margin. Now, I'm not going to take points off of this. On this project number one, you absolutely sang, but there was supposed to be a margin. And I did tell people that they could overlap the margin if they wanted to. So here would be an example of that. Let's say there was a margin here, half an inch in. This is the perfect kind of thing to overlap a margin, because if it did get it cut off, if it was being printed on a device that required the margin, your audience wouldn't have missed anything. But on this side, if there was a margin, it would have cut off part of the jukebox, which would have been a disaster. So these elements could have been moved down a little bit. You know, this could be moved over. Then this way you would have the perfect advantage that if it was printed without the margin, it'd look great. And if it was printed with the margin, it would look great. Do you follow what I'm saying, Laura? You do. So listen, I want to get back to what I like about it, though. So the jukebox is the star. It's got this arc shape, which the eye just can't resist, especially since it's the only one there. I mean, you look behind me. These arches are very strong, aren't they? You just can't avoid them. You know, so she's doing that with the jukebox, and out of it, as though it's music, three kinds of music are coming out. Uh, Hallucinate is a very strange word, but she's got hallucinate, levitating, and cool. So I'm just going to say, like, if I didn't think this was top shelf, I would stop everything and say, well, we probably would have wanted to talk about the concept a little bit more. Like, if you wanted to say to me, I'm talking about music, and music has the ability to be trippy, so I'm going to use the word hallucinate, for psychedelic music, and I was going to use levitating is a harder point to make. One could argue that the heart levitates when they're moved, right, by art and music. You know, cool is very general. You know what I'm saying? Unless you're talking about cool jazz, which is a form of jazz, Miles Davis jazz, primarily. But I have to say, the layout knocks me out so much that I'm getting a little bit past that. I think the concept could be tighter because you have such a great idea. This idea of using music to project three concepts. So I have to say, it's beautiful. The colors are beautiful. By the way, notice she barely uses outlines at all, because she really wanted these colors to touch each other, because they're very carefully chosen. Very nicely done. Well done. All right. So, before I move forward, I just want to mention, so I'm juggling concept, right? It's kind of odd, almost like we're an ad agency. Like, what's the idea? And I'm juggling design, and I'm juggling illustration. So in a weird way, it's like three primary goals, and every project's going to be like this. The concept, what are the ideas? Are they worthy? What's the design? Well, I've been talking a lot about that. Does the page work? And the illustrations, what about the separate drawings? So this is very nervy. We've got mountains upside down and in the text, and we've got the landscape sideways. So I have to ask the artist, just because I find myself a little unsure. Alex, are you there?
Yeah, it's like it like uploaded turned. It's supposed to be upright.
So that's what I wanted to ask you. I
Yeah.
got you. So would I be right saying that the desert's supposed to be the top?
Yeah.
So I wonder why it uploaded that way. You're not
I don't
alone.
know.
So, like,
I
okay,
tried putting it in like twice and it didn't work.
I
So
know. And the only solution that I found, since it's a Google problem, it's not about anything
mhm.
you did, was there's a way to turn it into a PDF. Are you guys familiar with PDF? Like, I know all of you heard of .jpeg, and now you all know .ai, or Adobe Illustrator. .pdf is a portable document format that anyone could open, so someone who doesn't own Illustrator could look at them. So with one of them here, I made a PDF and uploaded it again. I just want to show you guys something. I'm going to do this kind of quickly because I want to get to talk about the artist's work. Oops. Properly. So give me a minute. I'm going to download this. I'm going to open this up in Illustrator. Give that a minute. You can see why I'm not opening them all in Illustrator. So this is the way you wanted it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to do a quick save as. Whoa, that just moved away by itself. It's a strange day today. There we go. All right. So I'm going to do save as. I want to show you something. This is, again, it's usually used for convenience, to send to somebody who doesn't have Illustrator or to send it to a print output center. So this is still .ai. But I did save as so that the format menu would show up. And I'm going to choose this, PDF. All right, now the PDF, it will cook differently, so to speak. I'm giving it the same name, just that it's now ending in .pdf. And I'm going to save it there. I'm just going to click save. I don't really need any of the details. These little options windows show up. Right? And then when I'm ready, I could just upload it back to Google Drive. So if you ever have a problem like that, you could always give in another class, for example, or in my class, you could always make a PDF and give me both. Pop the Illustrator document in there.
Professor, you're muted.
Hear me now?
Yes.
I meant the digital door. There's no one, in my waiting room. Right, give me 1 second here. Sounded like it. All right, I don't think there is anybody. There they are. There they go. All right, so many details. This is definitely acting mighty strange. There we go. Okay, so is it acceptable that the artist put some text on its side? Yes. Is it challenging? Yes. So the one thing that Alex would have to be, careful with is what kind of project he's doing it. Like, would you do it for children in a children's book? No. You're not comfortable reading enough. Would you put the name of your client's company on its side? You'd really try to avoid that because they want people to see it quickly, right? So it's all about, like, can you really pull that off? It is cool to look at. I have done it, but I'm very, very picky about when I do it. I think it works pretty well here. I love the illustration of the desert and the illustration of the mountains, right? And the cave, now that I get a proper look at it, beautiful. And what a hard thing to draw. This artist did a great job. I do feel like if we had time, we could probably move those elements around to get even more impact out of the whole page. The things that you did that I just love, though, the idea of, we didn't learn how to do gradients yet. Those are blended colors. But a few people in the class taught themselves. I think it's next time soon. We're going to hit it really hard, right? But Alex put the blend inside the word. So it's got the desert-like color inside desert, and same goes for mountain, same goes for cave. So I like this a lot. I'm a little hesitant about a couple of things that I want to point out to you. Alex, where are you again? Can you wave at me one more time? There you are. You're so far from the camera and way down there, I lost you. I want to be very careful about not distorting type text, and that if you choose one font, to be loyal to it, so that if it's undistorted, it has to be undistorted everywhere. So what I mean by that is these letters look believable. Here they look squeezed, right? Here they look wide again, or even wider. So it looks like the same font where the letters were squeezed in different ways. So when we get a chance to do more typography, I'm going to point out how to avoid that, because to an experienced viewer, that looks like a mistake. So the general rule would be you'd probably find the smallest one that works, so you didn't have to squeeze it elsewhere. You take the large ones and go with the smallest functioning size, so you're not customizing separate words to have a different look. But I have to say, I think the illustrations are really terrific, really well done.
Thank you.
What a nice one. So guys, listen, can I just interrupt myself for a minute? I want to point something out. When you leave art school and a year or two has passed, you know what you're going to remember? Just critiques. You're not going to remember the teacher who taught you how to use the pen tool or, anything like that. You're just going to remember critiques because tools keep changing. But the way we see doesn't really. It evolves, but it doesn't really change between generations, other than stylistic changes. So anybody who takes notes about something that strikes you as unusual is a wise person, a concept that you want to keep your eyes out for. Juliana, this is just a beaut, and there's something about it that's just so confident. It kind of reaches that level of, why does it feel so right? So, I want to say something. If we all went to the museum together, and one of you is like a Picasso fan, and another is a Van Gogh fan, maybe somebody else likes Jackson Pollock, the famous splash painter, those three artists might get into a fight. Van Gogh looks nothing like Picasso, and who looks nothing like Pollock. But there's a certain point where you could say, well, what would you change? And you're like, nothing. Every itch has been scratched. And you got to give credit when that happens. So I want to say something about this particular piece. I don't want to move the gems. I don't want to move the text. Everything's got the right amount of air around it. Nothing's crowding anything unduly. And what's more, there's just a really nice method of taking my eye for a ride. I ride right up the word amethyst on this incline like I'm going uphill. I come down this sort of raindrop-shaped stone, brings me right to this necklace here, and I can go either way, wrap around to the beryl, and that takes me down to the very next necklace, which just takes me for a ride all the way over to the citrine, which is circular, take me back up the text. So this is a very confident ride. You're going to see this in just about every illustration and painting you ever look at after my class. I learned this from cartoonists when I was young, but it's true of all two-dimensional art forms, that the eye's taken on a ride. Very well done, really convincing. Juliana, could you wave at me? Okay. Nicely done. Hey, let me ask you a question.
Thank you.
Do you
Yeah.
have Illustrator experience from the past?
Just Photoshop.
Just no, so you're brand new to Illustrator? I'm so glad you said that. I told my breath when I asked that question because it's a good one, and I'm sure people are wondering, oh man, maybe she's got spent all of high school doing Illustrator or something. But no, really nicely done.
Thank you.
Welcome. All right. So, I want to say something about this one. I love the sheer nerve of it. I mean, June, it's nervy and it's alternative. And for me, this is all big praise. I have to tell you something. I've spent most of my life, at least outside of the commercial sector, so I do want to say something about that, trying to make art that surprises the eye, that makes a person have a different set of emotions than we're used to. And this one really does do that. So there's things I like about it, and there's things that I would like to ask for more, really. But I just want to say something. When you're watching a movie and some main character got killed and now it's the funeral scene, right? So, everyone's showing up at the funeral. Can I ask you something? What's the weather most likely going to be like? Say it's a guy who died, he leaves a widow. What's the weather going to be like?
Stormy.
Stormy.
Like dreary.
Right, very. It's going to rain. For that reason alone, I like making movies, by the way. I'm never going to do a funeral scene in a storm. It's too automatic. It's too expected. It's just tired. I'm going to do it on the sunniest day. And for the music, what do you expect the soundtrack? What kind of instrument do you think they're going to play in that very sad, rainy funeral scene? What instruments would you guess at? It's going to be electric guitar? Like, what do you expect? Harps? Anybody?
Maybe like a flute.
Violin.
Violin, I would think, would be the number one. It's the go-to let's cry instrument. So now it's raining and there's sad, sad violin. Oh my God, I can't stand it. I want the sound of an ice cream truck, that happy music. You know why? Because in one way, it's sadder that this person is not going to hear that again or deal with children or deal with ice cream. They're gone. But on the other hand, like, life goes on. And I would pan the camera to the other side of the street and let there be a playground there where the ice cream truck is actually pulled up, because that's much more dimensional than corny old emotions. So this particular piece here does not have corny emotions. It's definitely off on its own tangent. June, where are you? Can you wave at me unless your camera's off? There you are. Hey, those five of you who are cameras off, if your camera's broken or you don't have a camera, you could leave it off. Honor system, right? But if you have a camera, please turn it on. Um, so June, I like this a lot because of the nerve. You know, you're looking for something original and you found it. But here's my resistance. I'm not sure I really know what it's talking about. You know, for one, there's only 2 words when I asked for 3. All right. And the idea was that the imagery represents a letter. So a black swan, yes, there are black feathers all over the place. So you do have an argument, B for black, you know, and it is a swan, so they're feathers. Then I get down to singularity, which is a
Oh, did
deep,
you not see tear? I guess because of the weird.
oh, tear, I do. There is a word. I see it says tear,
Sorry.
and it's crying. See, uh-oh. Now I see there's a whole face there. Oh, I missed the face. And then it says singularity. Can you tell me, there's so many great uses for the word singularity. What do you mean?
I was trying to, because these are all song titles from like my favorite artists.
I see.
I was having the most struggle with singularity because the song itself is like a really conceptual take on the fact that like people are so desperate to go into relationships that they put on a mask, but then once like the mask starts cracking, the person leaves them and they're alone in the end.
So now I see the crack in the face as well.
Yeah.
So Jim, this is something I have to say to you, right? To all of you, like, I'm never going to condemn anyone for being super ambitious. It's great to reach high, you know what I mean? But I think first you might want to just, in terms of communicating anyway, you know, draw it back a little bit. You know, next project, make sure it's crystal clear. Because like if you're going to go for complete abstraction and try to like give me all these really abstract ideas in a 1-page illustration, it's an immense challenge, you know, like especially without knowing the musician. The one thing you cannot do ever is expect your audience to have background information. You know, I mean, look, if you're doing something for the music industry and everyone knows what a guitar is, that's one thing. But really, you're talking about one musician's song from a particular record. This could only go on that record, but it couldn't go to a teacher who probably doesn't know that musician. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, this is a communication project, and you can't communicate that to me. You know, it's like if I was going to start talking to you in Latin, you know, that would really be a problem because maybe I'd be the only one who knew it. So this is what I would say, you know, so it does compromise the project. I like the feel of it, the look of it. I love that. Now I see that this is a heart, which I didn't see before. Rather nicely drawn, but it's kind of crowded by a lot of elements, like the way the word tear was. So it was so crowded, I really couldn't see it. I was too busy trying to figure out what singularity was. So this is what I want to say to you. I love the drawing style after I've looked at it at length. So to be frank, it didn't have the impact for me to stop if you were a stranger. But since you're not a stranger, I stopped and I was rewarded for stopping, right? So I have to say, this is the difference, by the way, between fine art and commercial art. Fine art, you don't have to stop your audience. They're going to go by choice. People might not understand your work for years and then start to get it, and that's okay. But in commercial art, you are the one whose job it is to stop the audience, an illustration included. So I have to say, June, I like this a lot. I want you to keep that original voice. But if you do feel like upgrading it, I would love to see an upgrade. You know, if you feel like it. It's not required. You could wait to see when the grades go in, because I don't have grades for you right now. There's so much I like about it. Yours is going to be a hard one to grade, to be honest. You should feel good about all your originality. You're going to need to scale back just a little bit.
Like background information, because like I took your advice from last class about like really trying to take stuff from the lyrics and like other aspects from the song.
Right.
Like, should I send that to you, or like?
No, because that's not fair. You can't do it. You know what it's like? It's like if you made a movie and you're showing it to your family and you're saying, look over there. You know, this is the important part. Look in the corner. You know, the guy slipping the other one a gun. You can't do that because you're not going to be in 3,000 houses that are going to watch that movie. You know, you can't. You have to have the courage. When you show your friends, you have to zip your mouth. First, you're going to say, look, you have to talk about my work, but I'm not allowed to talk. And you'll be screaming inside. You know, if they interpret it wrong, you'll be like, no, it's this way. But you can't. You have to see how the world's going to see it without that secret background information. You know, that's part of the job. So, all right, I'm going to have to move forward, though. Got a lot of promise, so I'm excited to see what else you're going to do this semester. For clarity's sake, right? You can't really beat this. It doesn't get any clearer than this. It's like she could print this out and just post it all over the city. And I realized, it's not an abstract concept. She's not trying to tell me exactly what's going on in a person's anatomy if the virus should get inside them or anything like that. It's not. It would be a lot of fun for Samantha, to do something very abstract, maybe on some other occasion, and challenge herself to make a very abstract point, like what is God type of illustration. Whew, mouthful. But this is a project that really demanded clarity. It's beautiful. The colors are beautiful. I can't resist. I already talked this up a lot last week. I just want to point out a couple little sweet details. So the COVID virus is famously round, spherical, and she's playing it up all over the place with the dots over all the eyes on the page. So this little circle has a strong relationship with these large ones. And by the time you get down to this third row, I, and those three dots are right on the border to make sure that these rows lock together, right? And to make sure they continue the relationship with the actual virus itself. Notice that they're even the same color, including these circles that were introduced inside of certain letters. And then there's more circles here representing the people. This is just a super confident piece of work, Samantha. I wouldn't ask for a single change. Where are you? Are you there? I see you.
Thank you.
Gotcha. Well done. So guys, I want to say to all of you, I have an older friend who I met when I was your age, and he was, guess my age at the time. He's still someone I go to for advice. He once said to me, I did one piece that was especially good for me at that young age, and he said, but don't become a grace junkie. That comment stuck in my head forever. Which means sometimes you just rock beyond words, and then you're scrambling sometimes for a while to try to reach that high. I think Samantha's going to keep reaching that high personally, but if she wasn't, this was there as a sort of like, whoa, you can do this, but sometimes we pay our dues in other ways, when it isn't easy. But I have to say, I'm not saying it was. This is a very strong piece. It only got stronger. I liked elements about it along the way. It just got a lot stronger. The simple way of drawing the ram is very convincing. I could easily imagine a whole book drawn in that style. Notice, if you would, there's just a couple of colors, other than these couple little blacks there, that are describing the entire ram's head. There's the base orange that's serving as the primary color. In some cases, serving almost as shadows. No, actually, there's this middle orange, and there's the dark orange for strokes and a light orange for highlights. And that's all that it needed, 3 tones. This one's kind of only works with 2, but it very playful, very, very playful. And a lion, which looked like it was a very big challenge, kind of moving into a little bit more complex of a style, but I think it works really well. The wedges, as opposed to having horizontal lines, is working very nicely, right? Everything's got a very confident amount of space around it. The colors are shining against that dark background. The font works extremely well. This is you generally overused font, but it actually works very well for this subject specifically because it is a font that relates to the history of, you'll see this on a coffee cup with all those kind of references to Greece. So it kind of works for me for the Zodiac as well. Ancient thinking, I guess, is what it's holding it together. Really nicely done. I'm trying to get to know faces a little bit better. Lorian, oh, I see you. Nicely done. Nicely done. It's interesting. Guys, listen, I know this had to be grueling for a lot of you. It's like, wow, 3 whole weeks of Illustrator, interrupted by holidays. This guy's already asking for me to produce professional work. But part of it is just like, you need a reason to go in and do battle. And then you come out, and you come out the better. It's very nicely done. Let me take a peek. I want to make sure that I get us to a break at a reasonable
Professor,
time.
you skipped
Yeah.
over Daniela's by accident. She put it
Oops.
in the chat.
Oh gosh, thank you, Daniela, and thank you for helping, Daniela. I'm not always looking at you, so I don't always know who's talking. I keep opening your photo so I get to know you. All right, let me go back to Daniela. Is you going to help me find my place after this, right? Because I got lost quickly. There we go. Ooh, wouldn't want to miss this, would we? It's nice, right? let me see if I can back up a little bit because it's a little crowded by my browser. Whoops. Let's see. So she's got the three words being Jamaica, Hawaii, and Greece, and she's, taking a lot of liberties with the first letters, particularly on Jamaica and Greece. But I want to tell you, Daniela, what I like. Hey, Daniela, where are you? Can you wave at me? Do you not have a microphone?
I
You
do.
You do. Okay. So always feel free to tell me if I skipped you or made any terrible mistake like that.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
I think it wasn't working before. That's why.
Oh, no, I hear you now. So I want to tell you what I like I want everybody to really hear this out, because the thing I like best about Danielle's work is the page. I might have a couple little criticisms about parts, but the way she thought about that page just sings, and it scores really big. So we've got Jamaica on top, and it sort of rules the sky. Like she's giving Jamaica it's now like the boss of the sky. Hawaii is the boss of the water, and Greece is the boss of the sand. I think that's kind of a brilliant idea. Really, we could have put them in just about any order, but you wanted to treat the page as sand on the bottom, water in the middle, and sky on top, just like a landscape would be if you went to the beach and painted it. But here she's using those three elements as a way to describe a given country. I think that works great. And one of the reasons I think it works so well, other than just being a good idea, really solid idea, is the colors are really singing. The blue in the middle, of course, is going to be beautiful. It's played right off of this orange, and it's worth noticing that orange and blue are color opposites on the wheel. So they always have a big effect on each other. The orange, of course, is a gradient up until yellow on the top. Sunny sky, that works out really, really well. A very simply defined water. Still, even the water with these little highlights on the tips of the waves is very, very satisfying in this simple sand with the big challenge of putting I just noticed the feet. I love the feet way at the bottom. So each stripe is really good. I have to say, I want to point out something else that I particularly like. I'd like to draw everybody's attention to the top part, Jamaica. If you look in front of her face, right, and notice the shape the face makes and the shape it creates in the sky just beside her face, look at that bird. So what I'm talking about really is the space between this bird and the face. And to speak art school, I'm talking about negative space, right? One of the number one things you could learn in art school is to see negative space as a habit. I see space more than I see the objects in it. Non-artists only see objects. They don't see space, but artists see space and the shape of space. There's far more space in the universe than there are objects, right? It's really the universal priority. And as artists, we always use the shape of emptiness. So that shape is just killer, right in here, going back and forth. So that really works out. So listen, I got to tell you, though, just to be frank, Daniela, if we were going to press, like this is a poster, we could actually put out 10, 20,000 copies, plaster the city in them, right? What I'd probably ask you to do would be to work on a couple of quick things. Well, one, that letter J, and I know what it is. I do get what it is. It just isn't strong compared to how strong the shapes of the birds are, these incredibly confident flowers, the waves, all really confident. So this shape with a flat bottom and all, it's so framed by everything that makes me a little uncomfortable. The rest of the word looks pretty darn good. I'd also be tempted to do something with the head to make it more interesting. Since the front's working rather well, maybe it's just the back, because this shape isn't as interesting. Maybe you could use hair or something to come up with a negative space in here that's as strong as all the other negative spaces you have all over the place. So I would probably try to take advantage of the head. The main reason is it's the first thing people are going to look at, because humans are like that. If there's a person, we're going to go right to that person and spend our time looking at it, especially if it's in the middle of the top row. So it's got to just be, dead on. The page is singing, but I feel like that would probably be where I'd work the most. I was also a little confused by the letter G at first. And once I saw that this is sand, I started to assume that these were shells. But again, I don't know what I would do to upgrade that a little bit. But if I was going to look for itches, those are the two big itches left to scratch. The page itself looks great. The word Hawaii is laid out. Do you see what my arguments are, though?
Yeah. I just have a question. What you said about the J, about the flat bottom, like you want me to fix the J, I guess?
No, I'm not saying that I want or I don't want. I'm saying, but if you were working for me, I would want, yes. I would say because the spot, there's some mysterious thing that I'm going to call a strong shape. And this is versus an equally mysterious thing, a weak shape. And the reason I call it mysterious is you can't tell anyone the difference, but you could feel it.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And it's like a shape that is suggesting a curve and then suddenly flattens out is a bit of a bummer.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So there's that. And about the back of the head, that's not a weak shape. It's just that it's not producing a strong negative shape where you have everywhere else. So again, I would feel great about this. This is frankly, the reason I do 7 or 8 drafts of everything I produce is I'm looking for the one that does the work. It's the weightlifter. And then when I finally find that, I do duplicates to find the magic. So you got all the work done and a lot of the magic too, but there's just a couple little obstacles.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Colors sing, and I would stop if I was in a rush on the subway. Oh, all right, we've been here. Okay, hang on a second there. And I think we're up here. Guys, really do feel free to interrupt me, especially if I'm making a mistake. I'm human. Also, I have to admit, I was so concerned for you because I really didn't like all the holidays coming. So I'm literally determined to deliver on your behalf to get us the momentum that we need. So, more people could sing, as I like to say. So owl, crow, migratory birds. And so I want to say a couple things about this. I think this is upgraded a lot. It's moved ahead. But there are a couple things that, definitely need attention. And I know Hibby, was thinking about a drawing tablet and the rest of it. I'm not sure that's necessary, but more time will be necessary. And frankly, I might squeeze in just 5 minutes of the pencil tool because there's a trick I want to show you. Maybe I'll even do that now, but the owl itself is too important to be that weak. So it's, the shape is really unsure of itself. The colors are, and it's doing a lot of ground, but a couple things. It just needs to be a stronger drawing, more heartfelt, to be more confident. It's just going to take a couple more tries. I also would suggest that it be quite a bit larger. One thing that I have a problem with is if the elements are the stars, why would they be tiny? It's like going to the movies because this movie's got your favorite actor, but they're only in long shots. They're way back in the background. It doesn't really make sense. So the thing, you go to a restaurant, you order your favorite dish, and it's like this big on a big empty plate. You're like, yeah, where's my food? We want we want a big meal out of this stuff. So like the owl should be a starring element. The crows also. I like the crows up on the wire. It would be great if this one or one of them was just bigger. Like the foreground crow, it's bigger. And I'm a little confused by migratory birds. I had to think about it since you put it down here to realize you meant these birds up here in a different row. So that's very confusing. Maybe you just didn't need this blue down here. Off the top of my head, I would say that. I'd just get rid of this blue. If you're going with these bands to describe the sky, let it come all the way down so that I know migratory birds are these flock of seagulls, migrating. But right here, this looks like something that got left out. Maybe you hear me? What I'm saying? Yeah. So again, like I said, you handed it in on time. If you want to wait till you feel like you got more skills and you want to return to it, I'll accept it at any point in time. But I do feel like the owl definitely needs more work. Scale is very important, large and small. Don't make something small ever just because you don't like it. That's not an acceptable strategy. I want to say something else about the fonts for a minute. This works, and this works. I don't know why, but boy, does that feel owly. And then when I come here, I also accept it. And then suddenly there's a different font for no particular reason. So I got to say something about this. This looks like the same font, and the W surely shows it off, right? So if you're going to do 2 out of 3 elements with one font, you got to do the third. If you think about it, because a pattern was set up, it could have been 3 different fonts, right? And that would have been acceptable. But once you set up a pattern, it's asking for someone to like, huh, what just happened? Especially since the bottom of the font is not particularly interesting, and the other font's much stronger. By the way, it's also squeeze. Remember I was talking to you about squeeze text? So I'm going to have to come back to text to help people get better at that, to make sure that we're not squeezing text. So again, if you want to upgrade this, that's my advice for you. Bigger, better owl, a little bit more scale just around the whole thing. Things got too even, and I'd probably get rid of this blue and put in migratory birds, make it big, make a statement, large and confident like owl and crow. All right. I think I just want to check. I'm going to do one more. We're going to take a brief break. Oh, yes, this is one. This was a little strange. When we come back, I want to say something to Claire. Claire, don't worry about it. I have a fix for you. Where are you, though? Can you wave at me? Hi. So, I really don't know why I'm getting that. This particular file thinks it's too large to preview. And I opened it, and there was nothing unusual in it. I thought, oh, maybe there's a huge photograph in there that used as a reference, or something massive, and I couldn't find anything. But again, PDF came to save the day. So I made a PDF, and I actually put it in there earlier today. So just give me a minute to find that. Here we go. So we'll just look at that. There we go. By the way, I just want to say something about all this technology. You're all going into different majors, I'm sure. Are you all going to be declaring majors this year, or did you already do that? Nobody did that yet?
I think we're mostly communication design students,
Right.
and either in 1 or 2 years, if we're first or second year, we're going to pick bachelor's.
So, I'm very used to next semester watching all my students flip out and run around as they're praying to any number of gods to ask their major to be approved. I know some of you don't want to take another class with me. I'll probably see you when that happens. So I hope some of you go into illustration or into other design areas that would benefit from all this illustration, packaging and the like, animation and all those fields. So this stuff's going to really become very, very relevant at that point. So right now, even if you think your major is completely irrelevant to drawing, I think you're all wise enough to apply yourself, because you just don't know. Anyway, I love this illustration. I need to say a few things about it. There's something about it that just has so much charisma. And, there's this whole ethic out there, this whole love of mushrooms out there. They're considered magic, and not just magic mushrooms either. There's just something about the history of mycology that people just love to study, and all these myths about magical creatures hanging around them, etc. And I think this really has it. It feels almost like a medieval manuscript, like some monk in the year 1200 drew this thing. And that's partially because of the font the artist used, which really has that old, almost handmade kind of vibe about it. Also, the very limited palette, all these earth tones and neutral tones, and it's limited to earth and neutral tones, like most mushrooms are, even though there are some bright mushrooms out there. This artist went with that particular kind of earthy image. Everything's earthy and historic, and that just really, really works for me. I like the alternating design quite a bit. Even these mysterious splotches in the background, I don't want to ignore those, because frankly, I just realized how important they are. Claire, I probably already asked you. Can you wave at me again? There you are, right. Even with everyone staring at me, I get lost. But it just very consistent in the mood she was after. And the mood she was after is available to all of us. It's part of the collective unconscious. Bear with me for a moment, because that was a big thing to say. What the hell is the collective unconscious? And is there really such a thing? Bear with me for a minute. Listen for a second. And see, in your head, king and queen. Now, everybody in here sees a king and queen, because it's part of the collective unconscious. And you shared that early on. It's part of a language that's built into our species uniquely. I say trickster, right? Who knows what you're seeing right now? There's trickster myths in most cultures. It's also part of the collective unconscious. The woods, and the don't go into the woods, or the magic in the woods, and what's going to happen in there, from all those myths are all over this illustration. She's leveraging that. It's a lot of what artists always do, leveraging what's part of the collective unconscious, because it's part of yours too. Which I really, really like that. Okay, these splotches, by the way, are so important because they made the negative space work. So now that I look at it, if we deleted all these little nameless little marks, these darker ones, these lighter ones, and they travel all the way down, right? I think it still would have worked, but just not as well. I want to tell you why I think it would work. Guys, check this out. Watch this line I'm going to make. It's a backwards S. I'm coming up through the mushrooms, down the text, this mushroom coming over to this text, picked up by this mushroom, and back again. This is totally a backwards letter S. And that thing would have worked beautifully no matter what she did. But the fact that these are here make this negative space so much more interesting. And the cool thing about what you did is you could have put those anywhere you needed. You know, nobody consciously noticed them. It almost slipped by me, but they made the design work. So it's a very interesting thing when you're lucky enough to have something out there that allows some kind of a general thing you can move wherever you want for the sake of locking in your design. Now listen, Claire, I only got one small criticism for you, and it's not going to change your grade at all. I don't want you to run and make any changes about it. But about this issue of margins, not margins. The one thing that your teacher did was give you too much freedom on that subject, right? I was exploring it. Usually a teacher's like, give me margins or none. Not accepting work without a margin. In which case you couldn't put any work in that half-inch edge, right? I was saying, let's play with that idea. What if you try to make something that looked good with the margin? You could take life easy and just stay inside the margin, which a bunch of people did. Other people like, no, I'm going to actually go over the margin, but that stuff that's over isn't important. So if it's going to be printed in a way that the margin's cut off, my work's fine anyway. Now, that's a pretty sophisticated juggling act. Claire, you probably know where I'm headed now, what I'm about to say. She doesn't want this cut off, and this is in the margin. Types of mushrooms, a field guide. You know, truth of it is, the page would look gorgeous if that was cut off, but you don't really want it cut off. So it would have required some kind of different arrangement to actually fit there. And very frankly, anyway, a field guide's too close to the bottom, even if there wasn't a margin. You know, it's crowding the bottom, where you have just the right amount of air around everything else. So it makes it feel kind of crowded, right? I'm sure you could see that. It's still top level work, so I'm not really demanding anything. But again, anyone who wants to do a revision can do just that. So you know what I think I want to do? I think I want to, let me just take a look. I'm trying to pace things out. I want to squeeze in some stuff that's not on the handout, judging by your work, you know, that I'm seeing today, that I think everybody's going to be like, oh yeah, that's what I needed. So I'm just trying to clock myself a little bit. So give me just 1 second here. I want to come back to hear this. I was intending on taking the break at 4:20, and we're just about there. So I guess we should do that then. Let's go ahead and we'll take a break. I'm going to call, let's say, let's start again at 4:40, right? So it's a fairly generous-ish break, 4:40. Please don't be late, all right? Because I really don't want to have to keep on admitting people, which I'm going to have to do at the waiting room, but I'd rather not stretch out for 10 minutes. I want everybody to be there at 4:40, right? So Juliana or any other kind person who does that kind of thing, if I forget to start recording again, maybe you can help me. Thank you, because I do it every time after breaks. I am the quintessential absent-minded professor. What can you do? You guys all right? Everyone looks so serious.
May I ask a question?
Yes, please.
My file was at the top, but I believe I made my own folder for it. Should I put it somewhere else?
I'll find it. I'll find it after the break, but thanks for pointing it out.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, I'll see everyone at 4:40. Be back. I'll see you then. Okay. Hello. Let's give everyone just 1 minute to, get back in the room, as it were.
Professor, may I make a comment?
Oh yeah, please do.
Going back to the funeral conversation,
Yes.
one of my favorite movies is Harold and Maude.
What a great movie.
And I
Yeah.
love the movie so much.
Yeah.
And there's a funeral procession with a marching band.
Oh wow. Oh
There's
wow.
like a cheery marching band, and then the people walking out of the funeral, and just like the clashing of the scenes, and it's one of my favorites.
You know, you're making me want to see it again.
I bought it on DVD.
Ah, though, since you bring it up, I want to qualify something I was saying about all that. On the one hand, I'd mentioned the collective unconscious, and on the other hand, I'm saying that cliches don't have power. But really, in a way, these two ideas are very related because let's say you listen to the blues, right? All the blues has a lot in common. A lot. The last 100 years of blues, a lot. I mean, there's a blue note, a particular note that makes the blues the blues. And you could say, hey, Ira, well, why would you play that note then? Isn't it a cliche? Because that one's still powerful. It's genuinely echoing a collective response in the collective unconscious. You watch a concert and someone's playing the blues, they hit that blue note, and that's just when the crowd starts going crazy. So what I want to say about all that to everybody is, since you do want to communicate, we do have to use shared language. I know that in the past, when TV was less sexy, if people were on a date and they were getting all hot and heavy, they would play fireworks. They'd cut to fireworks, literally, like it's suddenly July 4th. And it was
We also
silly.
do that in Harold and Maude.
I'm just saying, but I mean, in the 70s and the 80s, the TV was just filled with that kind of collective unconscious imagery because there was a shared language where you could say things succinctly. And sure enough, that does have value. But we're always trying to freshen it up again. So you use a certain amount of that shared language to make sure you're communicating, especially in commercial art. But it always has to spin in some way so that it retains life and it doesn't just become another person listening to violin, because of the rainy funeral scene. I was just picking that at random. Because, really, when you watch TV, and I'm sure some of you could squeeze in some TV, so much of it is filled with cliches. It's just insulting, really. And then you find a show you like, and you're like, why do I like it? What about this show does something that keeps me on my intellectual toes or even my entertainment toes? Because it's not just wildly boring. Anyway, I want to get back to your work, but I just want to say in general, you're, as a crowd in here, if we all knew each other in 5 years, it'd be interesting to see how some people went into advertising and some went into game design and some went into this or that or the other thing, web design. And yet we're still going to share a language. It's interesting. You hang around with a bunch of painters. They'll talk painting, yeah, but within minutes they'll be talking about dance performances and concerts and strange movies and even science and all these things that relate to the arts in general, the culture in general, you leverage. And if you ever write a song or do an illustration that makes someone cry, right, it's because two things are at work. You understand the collective unconscious in their mind the same way you understand it in yours, so you can make someone else cry. You both have this direct line of the heart, but at the same time you didn't dish it out as a cliche. There was something that made it fresh, like the time when you're the person who lost the one you loved, as opposed to the one on the romance movie. And it's fresh again because, oh my God, broken heart's always fresh. That was a little heavier than I meant it to sound. Anyway, let me get back. Let's look at your work. Right, so, all right. Now, the question is, I am recording, right? I do believe I am.
Yes.
I am. Thank you.
Mhm.
So let's see. Where was I? I think, was I here? Yes. Oh, you know what? Sean, I'm going to make you wait just for a minute because I do believe. Did I skip anyone? Claire, is your folder further down?
No, you did mine already.
I did? Okay.
I think it was me. I'm at
Yeah.
the top in a gray folder.
Really? Oh, right. All right. Just so I'm going to do that now, and then we're going to come back and start with Sean from there.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So let me just, my computer is suddenly taking a break at the wrong time. minute here. Try it again. In a second, it's not previewing properly. Should have just refreshed this. Christina, is that the whole thing?
Yeah, it needs a lot of work. And after seeing other people's and looking at and talking about the revisions, I mean, the margins again, I'm realizing that I knew immediately that the top banner was going to be cut off by the margin.
Well, I just want to ask you just more specifically. It is the right dimensions, but it's just horizontal. Or I mean, are you certain of the dimensions? That it's the I believe it was 8.5 by 11.
I believe it is.
Gotcha. So it's just okay. So you just swap the dimensions, and I did mention because somebody asked if they could do it horizontally, and I agreed to that. So that's acceptable. I want to tell you something though. Even though you feel like there's more work, and I don't want to focus on the margins just now. I want to say a couple quick things to you. The main project was about the three letters being represented by three objects, right? And in some way, the page should be joined both in concept and in design. But the primary thing was the three letters representing three objects. So I see the B must be balloon. Now I'm getting it. C for cupcake.
And D for decorations.
D for decorations, which is a far stretch, you know?
Yeah.
Right. So I want to tell you what I do like. I like the rendering of the balloons quite a bit. The simple colors, the highlights most particularly. I also quite like the cupcake, really nicely handled, the way the cup itself is made with those ridges, as well as the beautiful blended color for the cake. Also nicely rendered cherry. So you're definitely figuring out how to draw in Illustrator. You know, the concept's a little worrisome because I'm so focused on it saying happy birthday that it's taking me really far from the assignment itself, you know. Maybe if there was a banner by the balloons that said balloons and a different one by the cupcake that said cupcake, so you could use your banner in some way and figure out what to do about the decorations. But the way it is right now, you've got about 9 upside down triangles, which are going to command the eye. There's no way around it. 9 upside down triangles with 2 huge triangles behind them. So that becomes far more important visually than you want them to be, because the balloons are cooler, more on point, and the cupcake's also cooler and more on point. So here all the kind of support stuff is stepping in front of the lead actors. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
One thing for everybody in here that we've got sort of like keep getting used to is when you're doing an illustration, there are starring elements, and you have to be sure that the starring elements deserve to be starring elements and that they're portrayed in that kind of role. You know, that they're not upstaged by backgrounds particularly, or any secondary elements. You know, our priorities in art are a really important thing. So I have to say, I would feel pretty good because the skills have already gone up. That's pretty obvious already, you know, but I would rethink what you want out of the page. Preserve the balloons most, preserve the cupcake most, but the rest of it's fair game. You know what I'm saying, so to redo. So I have to say, I think there's a lot of potential in here. Look, folks, I wanted to say something very capitalistic. You know, your teacher says lots of things that border on the spiritual, but I'll often say things that are all about the wallet. You know, as a commercial artist, I'm very quick to see what a picture's assets are. You know, what's the best thing I'm looking at? Because if you were working for me, I'd always be looking for that and say, okay, these are the best elements on the page. Sing, make them sing, make everything support them. In this case, that's the balloons and the cupcake. You know. So.
Did you say that we were going to be learning how to make a ribbon?
Yes, that's not today, but you know, and truly, you know what? I think it's next class, actually. So the next class is going to be a lot of focus on the pen tool, which I think some of you are going to love. I warn you in advance, it's the most challenging tool in the program, but I think you're going to love it because it also yields all kinds of great opportunity, and also avoids the need for a tablet in every which way. But But
That was an element I was struggling with. I wanted to do like a ribbon type of situation, but I couldn't figure it out.
yeah, that could be challenging. But I think yes, you will know how to do that pretty soon. Hey, June, are you okay? Oh, did she leave? No, you're there. You're awake, right?
Yeah, I'm just chilling on my couch because it's
Chilling, okay. Chilling is good. All right, I want to come back then to this. So, you don't have to say. I think these went pretty well after all. But I know that they would have gone better, if even better, if we had not been interrupted by that many holidays, really. But I'm still giving you the full-blown critique. I had some questions for Sean. There's some very impressive stuff here, and as an illustration on the whole, it's very convincing. So
Thank you. I don't know why there's like a white line at the top. That's like weird. I don't know why that's there, but.
Oh, thanks for pointing that out. So that wasn't on your version.
Yeah, no, it wasn't.
So look, Sean and everybody else, one of the big issues and critiques in my class is download time. So in the past, I'd have 26 people, and I'd download each piece and then open it in Illustrator, and it would just take forever. It would take a huge chunk of the class. If we were in the physical classroom, I would have you all put them in my pickup box, which is right there in school, so there'd be no download. So this semester is the first semester where I'm using Google previewing. So we're discovering its limits, like where'd that white stripe come from, and why was one person's work upside down and someone else's sideways? Good Lord. I don't know. Sean, we'll all ignore that white line. How about that? Can we do that?
Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
We're going to try to do that. I got a question for you, though.
Mm-hmm.
The swirls on Jupiter, for example, look incredibly challenging. So what's your secret? How did you do with this surface?
Okay, so what I did was I made like a gradient with like a bunch of colors, and then I like zoomed it in, like I like really zoomed in on a gradient so it showed like 4 different like grains. And then I went to Photoshop and I used Liquify, and then I just like dragged the mouse and it like moved the colors everywhere. So I feel like it
you
looks.
Brought that back into, and you brought it back into Illustrator?
Yeah, and then I like added the fonts and the stars in the background.
So I want to say a couple things about that, right? One, he did it to great effect, right? I want everybody's attention on this, right? Nobody hear that as an invitation to use Photoshop instead of Illustrator in my class, right? That's not an acceptable strategy. Now, in Sean's case, here, I'm going to allow it because Illustrator ruled the show, right? He did a couple elements in Photoshop. By the way, by the end of the semester, I'm hoping everyone leaves my class software agnostic, meaning software fluid, where you don't even care what program you're in. You go here, you get this, you go there, you get that. You're just making art. It doesn't matter whether you use acrylic or oil, who cares? It's the same thing with software. But this is a vector art class, so we're going to focus on Illustrator. So I'm going to ask you for the next projects to use no Photoshop at all, right?
Okay.
We'll say, though, now that he's given me those ideas, I would know how to translate them into Illustrator. You could have done a lot of very similar things in Illustrator, but maybe not this soon. So I have to say, I like what you did. I want to talk about the illustration as is. I just want to be clear for everybody. One semester, I had somebody who's just handing in Photoshop files. Like, that was okay. You didn't do that. So don't you worry about it. I just want to make sure that no one misunderstands what you did. But let's just talk about the design for a minute. First off, you got to congratulate the font. The font is screamingly outer space, right? You're not going to mistake that for a font you're going to use for mushrooms, for example, or for birthday parties, right? Especially the M on Mars, which is just like, here I am, I'm like futuristic, which really works out. I really appreciate the liberty of taking the little stars in the background and actually making them different colors like that. So it's much more playful than what you'd expect to see. So I think that's kind of playful. I like the canted angles, the tilts on the word Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. You avoided that impulse to keep them perfectly straight. They're a little bit more playful now with a very, very circle-dominated design, So we're really like looking at the pool table. We're going from one circle, one ball, so to speak, to the next big ball. So it's making a diagonal, and it's coming right, returning to this ball of Saturn, which is, of course, surrounded by the famous rings of Saturn, which looks great. I think one of the things that makes this work best, though, is the negative space between those planets and including the rings of Jupiter. This is a great black space. You know, if I wanted to, I could tell anybody, just draw the negative space for me. Take out a piece of paper, stare at it. Don't draw the planets, just draw the shape of the void. And he's got this fascinating shape. So it makes this a very, very strong illustration. I don't really have any corrections on this one, really. You know, I see there's something odd going on down here. I don't know what it is, like a kind of spare oval. You know, maybe you wanted to kind of wrap the word Saturn in it. I find that just a little bit distracting. I like the effort. It probably wasn't very easy, but I think it's distracting because the other words are very clean.
Okay.
And there's like a little collision now of the actual rings of the planet itself.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah, so I would just clean that up. Sometimes simple is better. But I think this worked out really well. I do like the way you're looking at it. You kind of get a peek at the future where you're going to be going in and out of Photoshop and Illustrator. One of the big questions down the road becomes, who's the host? Meaning, am I getting Illustrator stuff to bring into Photoshop? Or am I bringing Photoshop stuff to bring into Illustrator? That's going to wind up being a personal choice. And say, nicely done. Very interesting.
Thank you. Thank you.
Clever strategy. Did we look at this? So this one is a PDF. I think I made this one. I wanted to show Alexandra something. Alexandra, check this out. Now, why? Alexandra, where are you? Can you wave at me? Isn't that weird? Did you see that yourself? Look, it's upside down.
I like uploaded it like 5 times, like trying to fix it, and like I couldn't figure it out.
That must have flipped you out. I'm surprised you didn't send me an email. But it flipped me out too, because I did the same thing as you. I downloaded it, I examined it, can't find a thing. I'm blaming it on Google. But I made a PDF and Google accepted that. So that's something I clearly am going to have to spend a little time with us as a group. So just give me a second. I saw it only a moment ago. There we go. I want to ask you something, Alexander, right off the top. Do you have some Illustrator experience from before this class?
No.
No, because this is pretty impressive. So I was wondering whether, you know, you just had a little history. So let me just say a few things about this. Again, this is a very, very strong design that's going on here. And you'll notice I keep talking today about flow. You know, this idea that the objects in your illustration catch the eye and take it for a ride. So the donut definitely starts it. I mean, really very often an oval is a very strong, hard to avoid shape, especially an oval with another oval in it like a donut. So it's coming on this strong diagonal, and then the drips are so well placed. Imagine it if the drips were on the right side, right? It wouldn't be nearly as good. I'm not saying that Alexandra like studied this and said, oh, I need drips on the left to take me to the ice cream cone, but she felt it. You know, where do they go? Where would they serve a purpose? And here they really did, because the drips take us right down here. This cone is so wide, it's practically like an arrow pointing down the page. So I'm coming down here, I'm spilling down with these drips of frosting being taken by the arrow of the cone, and it's pulling me right into this whole kind of experience. But what's most important is it's all laid out to sit on top of this cake at the bottom. You know, so I'm coming down here, boom, I'm coming down here, and then there's all number of ways I could do this sort of number of possibilities, but they're all satisfying by the way this heavy weight of the cake at the bottom, you know, just how fulfilling that cake is at the bottom. So I think this design is really strong. It's interesting in this one how the white margin is preserved completely, and it just brings air into the page. Notice how the white margin plays with this little bit of whipped cream. You know, all this white is light, pure light, right? And it's infusing the page with its light, and it makes sense because there's an object in there that's also white, which is the whipped cream, which I think is just really kind of fantastic. Also, it's interesting to me that this greenish, yellow-greenish background works so well. I myself wouldn't have thought to use it, but it has a little like 1950s kitchen vibe, you know, like an old, you know, toaster or something from the 1950s, which kind of works with the waffle cone, which, by the way, looks very difficult to do. And she's got this incredibly convincing shadow on it. I mean, if you're new to Illustrator, this program's for you. There's no doubt about it. I love how angular the cake is at the bottom and how it's accented by these wavy lines. This is all about the diagonal, though, isn't it? The plate's diagonal, the cake's diagonal. You know, Alexander, one of the things that I really kind of like about this one, I'm seeing the tops of your food, right? The top of the donut. I'm looking over the top of the ice cream, the top of the cake. But I like that the cake, I see the most of the top. You know, it's kind of like, you know, here's my glass of water. But if I'm looking down now, you can see the top of it. And the further down it goes, the more severe the top is. So in a sense, kind of what you did with the cake, it's the one that has the most top surface visible. And I like that it's at the bottom of the page. It makes me feel a little like I'm looking down at it, which makes it very satisfying. You could see a lot of that if you, do you know the painter Degas? It's spelled Degas.
I like know the name, but I'm like,
Yeah, give me a second here. Let me see if I could get a good example of this. I'm maybe pushing my luck a bit, but let's see. You know, Degas' ballerinas are very, very famous. They're not for everybody. But look at the kind of space he creates. Like, look at this one, how much we're looking down at this ballerina. The thing is, if you look closely at any of his artwork, feet, it's almost like this separate camera angles. You know, you're looking at people, and then there's almost like another overlapped camera angle of the severity of looking down at the feet. So he does this exaggerated perspective that's so convincing you don't even notice it consciously. And some of them are more straightforward. These look like fake Degas almost, but it's at an auction house, so I doubt they are. But you could see he does these weird things to exaggerate the space. You know, you're looking at some stuff, but you're looking down at other stuff. So what you did reminds me quite a bit of that. Degas, he's a fabulous impressionist, early impressionist kind of guy. So I just want to bring that back. So I have to say, I don't really have edits on this. I did want to add one more thing. Why is that font so perfect? You know, I want to say something to you guys. You know so much about typography, you just didn't know that you know it. You know, your gut knows when the font is right and when it's not, provided you're judgmental when it comes to fonts. Boring, 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 yuck, yeah, ooh. And as soon as you say, ooh, you better give it some attention. I don't know why, but it does feel like the kind of thing you would see on a dessert menu or in a poster. Really, very nicely done.
thank you.
I want to move forward. I do want to mention something to a couple of you, something I just noticed. Gee, Annette, I think you might be the only one right now. I need your last name in Zoom because I have 100 students, you know, so sometimes it's hard for me to take attendance if you don't have your last name.
All right, I'll fix it.
Yeah, you should be able to click those 3 little dots on your box, I think.
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah, rename that. That'd be helpful. Thank you.
Mhm.
Nicely done. Nicely done work. Wow, I feel like, is this brand new? I just got to ask. I like it a lot, though. Sarah, did I see this before?
Yeah, it was a little different though.
Is it? Wow. I would typically remember one this strong. I kind of remember the style of the hands, though, so maybe that's stuck in mind. You know, it's incredibly bold, isn't it? I mean, the use of the margin on this one, it's not just like, oh, damn, I have to have a margin. It's using it. You know, the fact that this circle becomes this shape instead of a circle like this one is just fantastic. It's really strong. She's using color opposites again on the color wheel. Orange and blue are always going to show each other up, make them pop. Orange and blue do that, but this particular blue, this particular orange especially, it notice some sweet little details, like the shadow of this ball is pointed this way. How convenient is that? So I get to the other ball, and then right below the other ball, these 2 hands, and this one here takes me right down to the last one. So again, a very strong path going on, beautifully chosen font, very playful. You know, it's just a dash on the comic book side of fonts, you know, which works really well because this is action going on here. It might not be a superhero playing volleyball, but it's action all the same, and got this very kind of action font. I like the really high contrast you use also, Sarah, these dark colors off these much lighter colors, so everything's really bold, you know, clear. You know, by the way, some of you guys are really good at subtle color. You'll hear me talking that up too. I'm not telling everyone go out there and be as bold as you can, but on this particular project, its boldness is distinctly a virtue. Strong, strong colors, very, very confident design, really thorough. I love the fact that there's not a box inside the margins. It's just an implied box by what's left of these other shapes. Really strong, very publish ready. I think the only thing I would do if we were going to publish, Sarah, don't bother doing this either unless, you know, you feel strongly about it. A little bit of me wants this particular circle with its contents moved just a dash to the right. It's so, so subtle. And the reason being, these two are right up against the margin, right? So it sets a kind of feel. This one here would have a little breathing room, it looks like, or feels that way anyway. So this space starts feeling a little overly large. It's small, and I could be wrong even, but I know if it was mine, I would move it over a little tiny bit just to see if it was worth it. But I have to say, I think it's pretty damn ready to print. Very sure of itself, confident work. You know, I have to tell you something though. I've had students get an A, a B, and a C, or 3 Bs, or any variety of options, you know. So, you know, there's a lot of room for people to sing in here. I want to tell you something about this one right off the bat, Micah's. My favorite thing by a long shot is the sense of light. It's got atmosphere. You know, it's got atmosphere, the air in it itself has quality. Have any of you ever been at the beach or say the woods at sunrise or sunset, and the air is so thick with color, you feel like you could grab it. You know, you're so aware of it. You know, a sense of light that you don't usually get inside. You know, maybe in a dance club or something where the lighting experts know how to imitate it. But there's this atmosphere, this sense of there being dense light, very much like a painter's sense of light in here, which I really like. I also like just the sheer nerve of taking this and making it so frontal. It says station and it's facing us. There's no angle, there's no perspective whatsoever. This sign here is just facing us. And behind it is this abstraction of a city, including these two super ultra modern buildings back there that look like Frank Gehry for any architecture fans back there. And then again, also very intuitive flow going on. The stairs take me down to where it says platform, right? Which is pretty cool. And then it's followed up by these mice or rats or whatever they are, shifts directions. The angle's continued by this, which says tracks. So I really like all of that. So, you know, naturally, I think this artist is kind of waiting for me to say, yes, but, you know, this seems oversized. So I just got a question. Give me 1 minute here. I want to fix my computer's definitely being a little stubborn, or Google Drive is. There we go. Let me just see why they're being so stubborn about sizing today. Just does not want to size. Give me a second there. There we go. So I got a couple of questions, Micah. There's a lot I like about this. Could you just wait so I could find you? Is Micah here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, you are there. Micah, is your camera broken or you don't have a camera?
Yeah, I can, like, I have, there's like something stuck to my camera. I can't get it off. I have to go to the max.
Don't worry about it. Yeah, don't worry about it. I hear you. So I just want to say some things about it. Like, again, there's very much a painter's sense of light. I also like the strange perspective, which I appreciate after talking about Degas, because we're looking down at those tracks.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you're also playing a similar game, which I really like. It's pretty clear that what the weak link is, and I think you probably know yourself. Those two figures.
Yeah, they're a little underdone.
You know, I know this is no solution, but if we did delete them, the whole image becomes so much stronger because everything else there has nerve. You know, a nervy minimalist background, very nervy color, which is not minimalist at all. You know, pretty advanced, sophisticated color. And then you got these two figures. I mean, you know, part of it is we're so inundated with the cliche of figures that look like that. He looks a little bit like the bathroom guy, you know, in the guy's bathroom.
Yeah, I was trying to go for, like, you know, they have like the pictures on the subway of like someone dropping their phone in the tracks or something, like.
You know, I secretly love those drawings. My favorite one is the one that says, "Don't pull the brakes." I don't know if you ever noticed that one. Don't pull the brake cord. It's just, you know, they take that cliche symbol and it's so bold and there's such clarity, and every part of the body is undoubtable that somehow it gains some muscle. You know, and it is a cliche, but if you get into a cliche, you have to do it with muscle. These don't have the muscle that the rest of the illustration have. And to make it a little worse, one of them lost his arms. Man,
Yeah.
you know, they say don't go on the tracks to pick your stuff up. I don't think this guy was listening. You know, so Micah, I really like a lot. You have some sophisticated sense of color. I'm looking forward to seeing more. But man, those figures have got to go. You got to find a way. So listen, if you want to give me an upgrade, that would definitely help the grade because you've got a lot of other good stuff here.
All right.
But that's your big obstacle, the figures themselves. Right.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Did we look at Alexander's already? Am I getting confused?
Yeah, you did.
We did. Okay. You know, there's a lot that I like about this. There's a couple things that I'm just have to think about. I mean, what I like best about it is it's very much a graphic designer's way of looking at things. You know, it's so much like a design. You know, I want to show you guys something. Gee, I would love to be corrected about pronouncing your name. I want to know how to say it right. Is it June Kim? How should I say your name?
June.
It is June. Yeah. Okay. I was doing okay. All right. June, I want to show you something. I don't know if you guys heard of Milton Glazer. I just got to make sure that I know how to spell it. So give me a second. Is this how you spell it? That doesn't look right. Oh yeah, this is it, Milton Glazer. All right. Milton Glazer was one of the most famous illustrator graphic designers. You might recognize some of these. He's just absurdly popular for so many years. People still talk about this guy. And what I like about him was that he was half illustrator and half graphic designer. And you could see that in his work all the time. It's just so bold, constantly, you know, all this often sense of, you know, strong blacks, but definitely shapiness, this attitude, this very famous Bob Dylan poster. He did many things that you recognize from the past. And his work's been borrowed and copied and mimicked by just about everybody. I'm basically mentioning it for you, June, because I thought you might want to look him up later, Milton Glazer. I want to come back to your work, though. So I like this a lot. You know, I love the light that you chose, the sense of color. But here's what my limitations are. As much as I love the subtlety of the word cloud being so close to the color behind it, I almost didn't see it. And there's a real kind of argument about subtlety and commercial art. You know, it's like commercial art, you know, doesn't need to always bang you over the head, but I have to say a lot of the time it really does. You know, subtlety is maybe for other art forms, but, you know, in commercial art, maybe not. You know, I like it. I like your sense of color quite a bit, but one of the reasons it distracts me is I'm also distracted by the clouds themselves because they don't feel like clouds. You know, they feel like beautifully rendered spheres of light, wonderful color and use of the gradients, but it doesn't feel at all like a cloud. You know, I think I want to show you something really fast, right? It's something we are going to do as a group down the road. So give me a second. I promise this is going to be very brief, but I just want to give you a peek at something. If I took a bunch of circles and overlap them, right? Because I'm imagining some kind of cloud made of circles. One thing I might want to do is join them. Now, June couldn't have known this, right? We didn't get to it. So I've just given you a peek, right? What I would do is I would select them all. And then I'm going to get this tool from the window menu. We're going to hit this hard. It's called the Pathfinder. Window menu, Pathfinder. Watch what this one does. So there's about 9 buttons here or more, but it's this one here, the very first one. Look at that.
Oh.
Yeah, isn't that cool? So it's like she could have done something very similar to what she had and be able to get more cloud-like shapes. And at any point, one would be able to add on it, they would have to select, again, window menu, Pathfinder, and just click this first one. It's called Unite. Boom. Isn't that interesting? So I have to say I like her clouds, her illustration very much, but that might have helped a little bit, technically. So I like this a lot. It just, the cloud is for the letter C, and I'm not really seeing cloud. R for rainbow is clear. I love the umbrella. It is, you know, a strange umbrella, but it's fun. Mostly I like the wild design, the way she treated it. A rectangle in a rectangle, and everything else is sort of busting out of that blue rectangle. It's just its only purpose in life is to be broken out of. It's like a cage with the door left open, which I really kind of like. It's daring and unusual. So, all right. It's hard to listen to a critique for several straight hours. You know, I always like the flowers on this one. I think the design at this stage is the best so far. You know, the peony got larger, I believe, at least as I recall, and I think it really deserves it. It's just so nicely drawn.
Thank you.
Yeah, really, I love the drawing. And look, you know, I really want to be, you know, very frank with you, Annette. Love the flowers. And I would still mess with the design given the time. You know, I'm a realistic teacher, and I know your other professors at school are very demanding, and some of you take a lot of classes, probably more than you should be taking, to be honest. So I'm not going to keep on asking for revisions. You know, I'm going to be realistic. But having said all of that, I love that the peony is so much bigger than it was, but it feels cramped up in the corner. You have all this room saved for the text, as though the text is all that important, even though it's not nearly as beautiful as the artwork. So I probably would have made the text much smaller so I could let this artwork breathe a little bit. Like, this is stuck in the corner almost like it's, you know, wants to leave. And the same thing goes for the lavender, which is so nice. And, you know, it overlaps the border and all. I don't really mind that. It just looks a little uncomfortable. You know, like when someone gets on the elevator and you don't like the looks of them, so you plaster yourself up against the wall.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It feels a little like that. Like, you know, when the drunk guy gets on the subway and everybody else is like, arr, you know, it's just like these flowers should just breathe. I wish this was further in, and this was further in, and this was further in.
Okay.
The script font works best. I think people would probably agree with me on that. Excuse me. I unplugged myself. The script font, I'm a little less sure of the not script font, because it's a little kind of dry and it gets a lot of attention. So I don't know. Mostly though, I think it's a top shelf project. I'm very excited for a first project. It's really very challenging and beautiful.
Thank you.
If I was going to fix it, I would make the text smaller. I would focus on the script font, you know, try to get it to fit just right, but at the service of the illustration and not the other way around. You know, it's funny. This is right out of the handout when I was talking about what's strongest on the page and how would one leverage it. So I want to say a couple things about this. There's one specific killer moment on this, which is that bear. I mean, that's just a fantastic illustration of a bear, and the whole, even the simple way it's merged into the grass is a great way to avoid drawing paws. Rachel, crafty. Where are you, Rachel? Can you wave at me? Is she here? Oh yeah, no camera. How are you doing, Rachel? You could turn your microphone on, you know, just by clicking it. Rachel, say something, because I'm going to think you left the room. You don't want the teacher thinking that.
She might be in the bathroom or something.
True. That came to you from the Student Defense Fund. No, anyway, I'm not going to talk about her work if she's not answering, because I don't want her to miss it. So Rachel, if you're there, say something. If not, I'm going to come back. But the bear is killer. I had a lot to say about the rest of it, but I'm going to wait. I'm just going to mark it so that I remember that I didn't actually talk to the artist yet. You know what to say about this one? It makes me a little bit nervous because it's mostly text, and it feels like the illustrations were not really worked on. You know, I think the fence looks very difficult and rather accomplished, so it shows what the artist can do. And even this unusual structure that I'm having a kind of hard time understanding, it's kind of nicely drawn. It's got a clear perspective. You know, I can see this tower is blocking a bit of a bridge of some sort, which is going to the tax cube, you know. But really, like, by and large, I'm just not really understanding it. I've got capital letter, lowercase letter is for, and then I'm having a hard time seeing the word abolish. It's so buried in shadow. And I really don't know what that is behind the fence. The fence is the starring element in this top corner. I move to the right, and it's almost all text. This hand looks fairly well drawn, so I wish it was used. So it's one thing you're going to hear me say all semester, and I'm going to use a very commercial word. Capitalize. I'm going to say capitalize on what's best. If there's something in your illustration that just really is a knockout thing, see if you can really use it to carry weight. You know, if you're in a band and someone had a great voice, you'd ask them to sing. So it's part of it is like looking to see what's already has value there. So this one really openly does get me nervous. You know, I like that hand. Maybe it could have been used more. I love the fence for sure. This one here is a bunch of brown circles, so I'm really kind of confused by it. Again, this shows some ability. I love the perspective. Look how you see very little of the ceiling of the roofs because we're looking across them, but you see a lot of the ground because we're looking down at it. So this artist has got some kind of vision, but I'm not thoroughly understanding what the goal is, right? So, you know, Francesca, I would personally recommend an upgrade on this one. You know, I just need more drawing. You know, it's almost, some of it looks like you found an easier way out. You know, maybe you felt you just had to get the deadline and all that. And you did make the deadline. So now you kind of owned that opportunity to, you know, rethink it a little bit, you know, so. Wow. It's just really good. There's a lot I like about it. Look, folks, you know, at some point you're going to go from hopefully liking me to possibly hating me, because my job is always to point out what needs to be better. And who wants to hear that? Who wants to hear that all the time? But here it goes. First off, what's good about this? I think we'd all agree the color is just fabulous. You know, it's fresh, it's unusual. We really haven't seen anybody working with this palette. It's not bold in the sense that it's not high contrast. It's low contrast. These colors are near each other, and yet it's beautiful. It really creates a light kind of vibe, a light feeling. Look how the orange soda area, it's mostly oranges, just different oranges. How often do you even think of using pale orange? But it works out here fantastically well. This bottle is so well described and very few elements too. You know, above it in this pink area for sparkling water, this can look really rough to draw that. Really, really rough, even though that's the one thing I am going to criticize in a minute or two, to be fair, Ashton. I like a lot about it, and my idea is sort of simple, and some of you may already see it. But before I get there, I just want to say something about the bottom. The lemonade just rocks. It's a symphony in yellow. You know, it's a symphony in yellow. And it's just, you know, when I was at the School of Visual Arts, some teacher gave this assignment where everyone had to do a portrait of a celebrity in one color. So it was so odd. You know, you define a celebrity and in your head say, what color is that celebrity? You know, a friend of mine did blue Marlon Brando. I don't know if anyone knows Marlon Brando. And it was gorgeous. Symphony in blues. It was a great assignment. Clever teacher. So this is just rocks. So here's my only complaint, right? Ashton, where are you? There you are. I see you. I'm just uncomfortable with only one thing feeling cramped by a wall, in this case, a ceiling, to be blunt. Like, it's not like you're not overlapping. The bottle overlaps the right edge. And truly, I am a little uncomfortable with this oval of the base being against the edge like that, because it's so crowded between the wall and the label that my eye gets a little stuck in here. You don't have any problems like that with the lemonade. And even with the spilling, you might say, over the edge, it still has flow. There's no place for me to get stuck. I'm very concerned with flow. So this here feels a little surprising up there. You know, for one, the can feels larger than both the bottle and the cup. Not that it is. You know, it's roughly the same size of the cup, but since it doesn't taper the way the cup does, it's largest. Also, it has by far the most detail, so that gives it even more weight. So not only is it the bulkiest of the three objects, it's not glass, you know, it's not tapered, but it's also got the most detail, so it gives it a lot of weight. And the fact that it's slammed up against the ceiling or even past the ceiling is a little uncomfortable. I have to wonder if it could be brought down a little, even if it had to be made just a dash smaller to pull it off. It would fit nicely in the little puddle it's making. Anyway, sparkling water, orange soda, lemonade, it really is a beauty, I have to say. That's the small change I'd consider. Doesn't make or break it in any way. Ashton, really well done.
Thank you for your critique.
Hey, do you have Illustrator experience from before?
I have a little bit, yeah.
A little bit. Okay. I want to be fair. I want people to know that. You know, you're all going to be rocking by the end of the semester. I mean, those of you who want to will, because you'll stick with it and you're going to get there with me.
Professor, I'm sorry. I have to go open the door for my mom. Sorry.
Oh, that's fine. Thank you
I'll be
for
right
being
back.
so polite.
And Professor,
Yes.
two quick things. So one, Rachel is back, and
Oh, thank you.
two, I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name, but Hadassah says that you skipped him or her.
Okay. Hadassah is pronounced right. And Hadassah, I'm going to go back to you then, and Hadassah and Rachel both. Thank you, Juliana. It's very helpful. You know,
Thank you, Juliana.
You're welcome.
It's really odd watching people look across boxes. I have a class where I have an assistant, and I went like this, and she was so clever. She went like this, like I'd handed her something. It bugged the whole class out. How'd you guys do that? But I just want to say something quickly. When I was a child, my parents called me the absent-minded professor. Maybe that's why I forget when I skip someone. I don't know. I blame it on anyway. I want to, Hadassah, Rachel, I will not forget you. I want to just finish this. Oh, I think we already looked at this, didn't we? Yes. Okay. So let me back up. And we have just enough time for the couple things I want to show you. You know, guys, I really have to say something about Hadassah's. This is like a testament in clarity. I don't want anyone to think what I'm looking for is complexity. If you enjoy complexity, you should bring it into my class, you know, because I also do, but I also like simplicity. Basically, my taste has nothing to do with either. But when simplicity is handled like this, you gotta give it a thumbs up. It just has so much charisma. I mean, I love the fact that I have to ask the artist a quick question before I go further. Hadassah, did you handwrite the word pencil, or is that a font?
No, I use the tool, the pencil tool for it, so it gives that look of being
Got it.
by a pencil.
Good choice. It was a good choice. Now I have to remember this artist I wanted to tell you guys about. Oh, don't you hate when that happens? It's like on the tip of your... Oh, there's an artist I have to show you, Hadassah. You're going to love this artist. And now I'm next to my bookcase, so I'm looking for guidance. And right after class, I'm going to look so I could show you next time. Is an artist who did most of his typography by drawing it. He's also one of the most famous illustrator designers who ever lived. And embarrassing. Well, yeah, I can't remember his name. Anyway, let me get back to your artwork. So yeah, notice though how this could have been a rectangle and she chose to put it on a diagonal. Very, very simple choice, right? Really kind of reminds me of cartoons from like 1970s, 1980s, or more recently Ren and Stimpy, where nothing is parallel. You know, like you open a door, you see a cartoon door, the lines are not parallel. So she's taking that freedom and it brings the white of the page in. So there's all this light. So then I'm kind of zipping around the boxes and I get down to eraser. This is an actual font. I think it's called Chalk Duster or something like that, which works very well with this beautifully drawn eraser. as simple as it is, it's just beautifully drawn. I even bothered to put the company name on the eraser. It's an interesting detail. I love how the pink for the notebook actually overlaps the notebook page. You know, Andy Warhol would do this all the time on his famous silk screens.
I love Andy Warhol. It's my
You?
favorite. Yeah.
Oh, great. So I'm glad you know that work. You know, silk screening work, let's say you had a red, blue, and yellow piece of art. There are these ways of getting the red to fit just where it belongs and the blue next to it and yellow. He would intentionally mess them up so the colors would slightly overlap. And it became a big part of the conversation of art since the 1970s. And it sure is a lot more interesting than just having a closed-in rectangle there. You know, clearly she didn't want to be trapped by the rectangles. So there's several ways of making sure that didn't happen. Just with these angles, very well-placed white negative space. You know, these two diagonals here going in the opposite direction, the pencil and then the eraser. Again, I'm still very impressed by the eraser particularly. But it's the design on this one. You know, it's just the design. Just pencil, eraser, notebook, it all makes sense conceptually. It's simple, it's clear, it's focused on clarity more than anything else, which I have to respect. Okay, now you got to help me one more time. I said it, remember. Did I skip someone still? I feel like I did.
Rachel.
How could I forget you, Rachel? No, I'm not going to do that.
Because I've been on mute the whole
Professor,
time.
do you think mine needs revision?
What's that?
Do you think mine needs revision?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't. So I'm really going to confuse people because we've seen some very complex ones. We've seen some simple ones. You can't find a pattern of taste in my class. So you can never play that particular strategy of, you know, what does the teacher want? You're never going to figure that out with me, you know, because my own interests are across the board. It's like some of yours, very eclectic. But I know that awesome design can always be seen. I mean, if we looked at the cave paintings of Lascaux, the most famous cave paintings, they didn't have language yet, those people, but the designs are off the hook. You know, no one ever heard of a school yet, and those cave painters were just killer designers, not just able to draw a mean bison or a bow and arrow, but they designed the cave walls. So I wanted to say about this one specifically, I was focusing on the bear before because this is the standard. You know, remember I was saying to you at the beginning of the class that sometimes there's one object on a page that's trying to tell you what your direction needs to be. And I think this is one of those pages. There's a couple of very smart things I want to point out. There's a couple things I'm a little less confident in. But I want to say the thing about the bear is, you know, I'm expecting that it's completely original, right? Not influenced by anyone else's work. But it's a wonderful shape. It's fun to look at. So much so I wish it was larger. The dark shadow on it is this bold, one single flat color of the darker bear, which is also very, very strong. And it's just a very, very confident animal. When I move to this animal, is that an opossum?
Yeah.
Gotcha. And the raccoon, it's not that I don't like the drawings. It's like they feel a little bit almost like three different styles, or at least two, where the bear has got his own style and these two guys are a little bit closer. I want to say I kind of like the opossum in the sense that it's a little underground looking. It reminds me a little bit, and here's another segue from your teacher, of Gary Panter. Now, Rachel, I don't know if you're going to like Gary Panter, and if you don't, forgive me for the comparison. I just want to say something about this incredibly famous, successful, and rather bizarre underground cartoonist. You know, Gary Panter could obviously draw. I mean, you look at this, it's you know, guy could really, really draw. But sometimes he chooses to do this. So if you look at this one here, you know, it's like, okay, he could clearly draw. He's also a little off his rocker, which makes it really exciting. And then you look at this one, and we could argue. You know, some of us are going to say that's terrific drawing, and others are going to say, nah, my kid brother could do that. No, they really couldn't. But it might look that way. What I love about this guy is he's utterly restless and completely free. You know, the artist's style just keeps on changing. He's wildly successful. Also got very famous on TV, where his work was being used by Pee-wee's Playhouse, a show that was once very popular. But the designs are always killer, no matter what style. You never want to move anything. The colors and shapes are always where they need to be. So I don't know. I thought you might might enjoy Gary Panter. I don't know if he does anything for you, Rachel, or not. But I just want to mention, again, a stylistic anomaly. So I have to say, I like this because it's kind of kooky. I like the couple bold blacks. I like the weird expression on the creature. The raccoon is a little quieter, but also very much a raccoon, kind of handled almost like a little bit between calligraphy and illustration. But I also like a couple other things. I love the idea of the footprint being an element. This apple core, somebody's chowed down on the apple core. Even these things poking around from behind the letter, I like all that. Particularly like this pink tail, kind of messing with the background. But I don't feel like the parts are really helping each other yet as a page. You know, and I don't know why. I think there are a few different things. One, the shapes are just too even. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 shapes dominate the page. There's no large and small. It's all kind of even. So I think just messing with that evenness would probably make it a lot stronger. I also feel like the bold outlines on the letters get a lot of attention, especially on the pink letter O. That big bold outline makes that letter O the most important thing on the whole page. So that the drawings, which are so interesting, especially, as I said, my favorite is the bear, they're compromised, they're challenged, because my eye's drawn here. By the way, a big letter O is always going to get your attention. It's like a target. You know, then you get a pink letter O. It's even more of a target. Forgive me, guys. I have one thing that there was no way to avoid. I set in a timer. It'll only take an instant. I apologize. So. So I don't know, you know, Rachel, if you want to give me a version 2 of this, I would. I would take advantage of the drawings, make more use of them. I'd play down the letters because even though you had the right to do that, the big single letters, I knew what they stood for. Those letters are not as interesting as the drawings are. And the fact that they're getting equal attention is sort of reducing the overall impact.
Yeah, I'll probably send in you like a second
Version.
a second version later. Most of the time I have no idea what I'm doing. So it's
You and me both.
Yeah.
I do. I don't mind that because we're an intuitive tribe. You know, we really run mostly on intuition, especially for the first 10 years or so, and hopefully your whole life. But then the intellect comes along, always second to intuition though. Intuition first, intellect second. Kind of support it, help it figure out when things don't work, and where your tools are, where your assets are. I definitely think they're in the drawings. They could be used for better benefit. So yeah, I would welcome a redo. Guys, am I right that I didn't skip anyone? So look, I have 20 minutes. Do I? Yes, I have 20 minutes and I have a lot to show you. I have to show you one thing. It's kind of driving me crazy. I wish I had shown you sooner. It doesn't typically fit the map of this class, but having seen your work, I think a lot of you would have liked it. So I want to show you something. You know, usually when I do demonstrations, I have you join me, but not at this late hour. Next week, you'll be joining me. I want to show you something. So we saw a lot of pencil tools today, and I think that's great. I'm going to my pencil tool. Here it is, right? And you know, when you're drawing with the pencil tool, the fact that if you're on a touchpad is a problem. You know, you get these weird lines. I already pointed out a few things about that tool, but I'm going to focus on smoother lines in a minute. But before that, one thing I saw today that I was pleased with is people recognized that you had to close shapes to be able to fill them properly. So I appreciate that quite a bit. I want to remind you that the pencil tool does let you redraw shapes. So if they're not smooth enough for you, you get to come back in and perfect them little by little. So again, I'm not using a drawing tablet. I'm using my touchpad. And this is a beautiful thing about the pencil tool, that if the drawing's selected, like mine is, as you can see, you could keep coming in and make little edits to it. You see, that edit didn't work out, so I'm going to Command Z. Now, what I want to show you, though, is could I have done anything to help this be smoother to begin with? Watch this. I didn't mention this before. Brand new stuff. If I find the pencil tool on the toolbar and double-click it, this opens. Now, a lot of the tools will do that. If you go to the toolbar and double click, it just might have options. So I want to take a look at this particular slider. They call it fidelity, but you could think of it as smoothness. If I go to the left and click OK, every drawing I do can be as rocky as I want, right? But if I had that in the middle, that's the default. So this is what you've been using. And I tried to make a rocky line like that. I'm imitating it. It got smoothed out a little bit. But watch this. This is the part that I really want to focus on. Let me move these guys over. I'm going back, I double click the pencil tool. If I crank it all the way to the right, this is going to be very smooth. Now, so smooth that I'm going to like it most of the time. So no matter what I do, rocky, 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 move on, right? When I let go, it smoothed the line out. So if I was focusing a little bit more and really thinking about what I'm drawing, it over smoothed the nose. See, that's the only problem with that. I love the rest of the line. I mean, I could change that tool and come back later. So I just want to mention something about that tool. I'm going to double click it. I tend to keep mine here. 3/4 smooth. This way I could have gotten the kind of nose I'd wanted without it over smoothing, but still helping me get an almost pen tool smoothness. If any of you found that useful or interesting, good. I kind of wish I'd shown you last week. I can't show you everything in 1 week, so this is going to happen all semester, where I'm going to show you something, you'd be like, wow, I really needed that. 20 hours of beating my head against the wall ago. But at least you know that now. Double-clicking the pencil tool, you could choose the smoothness. All right. I want to just talk up the next project in a short amount of time, right? We only get a couple of weeks per project, right? And the first week, I will always ask for sketches. And sometimes I'm going to surprise you and ask you to show them to me. Some of you have been photographing them and sending them to my email, and I've been responding. But you have to do those because the next week, it's going to be the first Illustrator draft. And by then, you're going to know more, right? It's going to probably be a little more advanced, and then we'll have 1 more week to polish it. 1 sketch, thinking out loud on paper. 1 the following week, Illustrator, first round, and then 1 week to perfect it. So that's our plan. Week 7, this is week 4. Week 7, the next project's due. Let's take a look. So I want to show you something on the handout. So this is the homework box that you're probably getting used to already. And what I want to start with is this little link here. You notice I put in this little red box so you can't miss it. Let me get a little closer. Boy, my browser just doesn't want to zoom today. There we go. So if you want to see samples, and we're going to look at these in a minute, but first let me introduce the idea. You're going to describe a process to me, something simple, in steps. Like, this is how you tie a shoelace, or this is how you fry an egg, or, one student of mine loved her rifle. Yeah, that's a little scary. But she showed me how you clean it in 6 or 7 steps, and she could draw her brains out. And frankly, I was afraid not to like the drawing. Anyway, so let me show you some samples so you can see what other students have done in the past. This is killer, right? This is one way to make a grilled cheese sandwich. So you notice the first frame, this is 6 steps. Let me jump in. You get 6 to 8. 5 is not accepted, right? If you need to bend the rules, you need 9. I'll cut you slack, but try to avoid it. 6 to 8 is what I'm after. This person chose 6. So there are the elements I need for this process. I need the bread, I need the cheese, I need the butter and the knife. And then here the cheese is getting sliced. Here it's getting placed on the bread. They gave me a track to follow in case I get lost so I could find my way to the fourth step. By the way, I would have found it anyway because in the West we read from left to right. So I would have never gotten lost. But the track looked great, you know, and the artist chose to use the colors well. So then here we are, there's a frying pan getting buttered, right? Really nice. And of course the bread's put in there and then there we are, final grilled cheese. This is a completely different approach. This artist chose not to use the background at all. Right, how to make a gin and tonic. Very easy drink to make. We got all the ingredients laid out there, including a lemon or a lime and a spoon. The gin's poured in, the tonic's poured in, stirred, the fruit is squeezed, and there's the drink. I want to tell you what I like about this one, and there's a couple things I don't like, but I chose it because I wanted to mention a few things. On the bottom row, I like the way it ascends. So it's a short glass. It feels taller on the next frame because it's got the fruit over it. And then it's tallest at the end just because the artist chose to show that glass the largest. It's the finished product. But what you get is a diagonal line that crosses them. And I like that so much. I do wish the artist did the same thing in the top row because it shows that I'm graduating one step to the next. And here I am at the large crescendo. The other thing that I liked about it, though, is, boy, it's black and white. That was a surprise. And it focused on black. You know, the line's all white. You know, and frankly, drawing ice cubes is just hard to do. You know, really. That's just rough. So I kind of like it. It's fresh. It was different. No borders or anything. This one here is just flat out killer. It's just killer. Clarity, 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 you know? I mean, it's so clean and clear. So there we go, right? We've got the milk. We've got some kind of, I guess it's a box of flour, some eggs. 2 ingredients get mixed in the bowl, stirred. There we see that the star of the show is now the oven. It's come out of the oven already. We kind of like jumped ahead and they're piping the top of the cake. They're putting a little pattern on it. And then this beautiful finished cake. This looks like it was a challenge. But most of it doesn't look like it was a huge challenge to draw, but it was a huge challenge to think. Also notice how careful the colors are. Very small palette, but it's completely professional, and I don't need any text to understand it. You're going to tell me how to do something just in drawings. I don't know if you ever built IKEA furniture, but this is what they do all the time. You know, let's see what else we've got. This one I also chose because it's a little nutty. In you know, this person just, you know, had a kind of a little wilder style. I mean, like this pot looks like it's been smacked over someone's head a bit, but it's beautiful. They chose little angular overlapping colors to create this feeling of light and shadow, which is very stylized, but I like it. And they did it again here, little angular shapes lied over the original pot for lights and darks. Does it over and over again, very angular style. But anyway, honey, pot, I guess it's a box of tea. Pot's water's being boiled, the tea bag's prepared. Notice how huge the tea bag is because it's a great shape. And it's got this curve of the cord that helps me stay in the page so I don't get thrown out by the tag heading to the right. So I'm coming around here, across the pot, down the tea bag. Coming down here, I like how big this one is, right? So there's a little variety of size. It'll kill you if things don't have a variety of size. But I don't know what's going on, to be honest. What is this exactly? Is this person stabbing this honey pot? I'm not quite sure. But they're clearly stirring the water, and then there's the finished tea. So just interesting. No borders on this one, but it works very nicely. I let this artist use type, and I want to tell you why. Avoid it, right? Because you want to know you could communicate in pure imagery. You know, that's a big part of being an artist. Can you say it all through the images? The thing is, this artist did that, and very successfully. Then they wanted to use the type because it was such a killer design element. And I was like, look, they made their point so well that I was like, okay, we could add the type. And look at how great that bold text with the little period looks. And even the air around it, it's so smart. It's almost making little corners as though these were in boxes. So it's really kind of very fresh, clean feeling. And I know how to make an energy drink now. So in this case, the type really helped the design. The mission was already satisfied. I want to show you one just because it's so difficult. It's a complex choice this artist made. Like, I love this one because I just like looking at it, but it did take me a little while to understand what was going on. But, you know, when you look at it, you could really get it. The tops of these flowers, which are very graphic, right? Very simple line-drawn flowers. The tops are being cut off. Then it looks like the stems, you know, so they didn't want the flowers. They wanted the stems. They're cut into points. And then we move to this plant that's being like kind of amputated. And little cuts are being made in the branches that are left. And now it's starting to make sense. They're taking these pointy spikes and shoving them into these, you know, doctored branches. And then with some sunshine and apparently salt, one can mend the gap. Looks like they're saying they have to be watered. And they're saying you could splice a plant this way. Now that's complicated. And it's kind of beautiful in a strange kind of way. Notice oval boxes, and some are open, one's wide open. You know, they're treating the boxes almost the way a comic strip artist would, or a graphic novel would, where the frames are fair game. You could play with the frames. You know, they could be there, they could not, they could be part of the show. So I think that's kind of brilliant. I want to show you this last one, which looks like right out of Starbucks or something like that. This one gives me a pang. The student had to leave school, and they had so much talent. But I heard she's coming back, so. French press coffee. All right, yes, so there's text there, and the text does look great, but can you ignore the text first? Look at this simple drawings, clean. They're not using fills very much. They are down here, but the water being prepared to boil, and then the coffee's going into this plunger thing, right? What does this mean? This one little part. I'm not totally crystal clear on what that means. I like it so much that I never noticed that part before. Of course, the water's poured in, you stirred, you could see what's going on. The plunger's being pushed and timed, and then it's ready to go. I think it's a beauty. I do believe that's the last one. I want to tell you guys a little bit about this in the 6 minutes, in 2-3 minutes, so maybe I could answer questions. So here's the goal. You pick a process. You know, what is it? What do you know about it? How do you fold a shirt? I don't know. You know, or is it something complicated? Please don't do brain surgery. And I would also avoid nuclear physics, because I don't think you could do that in 6 to 8 drawings. So don't be afraid of the simple, you know, and the whole idea is, you know, getting that idea of getting that point across that you could communicate without words. And by the way, you could do international projects if you master this, because you're not at the limit of the spoken word. Later on, we'll talk about if you have a great need for text, like 2 of these artists did. But the first drafts, I want no text at all, for sure.
Professor, how big does it have to be?
Good question. Let's take a quick look at the handout. I want to look at the handout anyway, but the answer is legal size. And legal size is 14 by 8.5. But we're doing it on its side this time, right? So it's landscape. Let me just make this a little bigger. So it's 14 inches wide by 8.5 tall. I do want a 1/2 inch margin. I'd like people to be tough about the margins, you know, this time, or you're gonna have to get used to that kind of thing. Very often your artwork can't go to the edge. Not always, but often, you know. So here you have it. You know, I'm gonna let you read through this and not bore you with it, but I would like you to read through it on your own before you even get started. You'll notice here I got these 3 examples: grilled cheese, before I realized I was going to show you one. And here's one way I would break it down. Gather the ingredients, one drawing. Slice the cheese, butter the bread, assemble, toast, and eat. I got 6. Feed the cat. I do this first thing every morning. You know, gather the food, gather the bowls. Can you see that in your head? What that might look like? You know, open the can. You know, you could see. So apply makeup. I don't know anything about applying makeup, but some of you do, right? So the whole idea is don't use at least the top 2. I'd rather you come up with something completely of your own. Next week, what do you want? Well, you could guess, right? You want the separate drawings to be off the ground. You'd also like to be thinking about the whole design. So how you think is how you think. So you could draw 6 separate pieces of paper if you want. But you're gonna, if you do that, you're gonna need one to start thinking about how you want it arranged. So there's nothing digital required next week, no Illustrator, right? This is whatever you like to draw with that's physical, you know, pencil or anything else. Any questions about this? I would welcome a question or two.
How many sketches should we do?
That's a very good question. You know, the project's fairly large, right? So you figure if your process is 6 steps, you could see that as 6 drawings. And I don't know if the design is a 7th. So I'm hesitant to ask you, oh, give me 3 versions of everything. So I'm going to ask you to follow your own heart and vision.
Okay.
You know, if you're thrilled, if you're rocking the house on the first set, then that might be it. But if you're anything less than excited, do more, because you're right. You know, when you're not excited, you're generally right. You know, your gut is telling, your heart is telling you there's more to do.
Does it?
Yes.
You go, Annette.
Okay, thanks. Does it matter like where we do the sketches? Because sometimes I usually work digitally, so could I do the sketches digitally, or does it matter?
This is a good, Annette, just out of curiosity, do you use a stylus or a tablet or?
Yeah.
You do. So, you know, I want to be fair about this. Let me answer Annette, but I do want to say something to everybody else. In 2 minutes, my class ends. I have taken attendance already. So if anyone has to run for it, don't think I'm insulted. You know, that's okay. You know, we might go a couple minutes over with questions. So Annette, you bring up a good question. You know, I think I also sometimes draw on paper and sometimes write on the computer. So I'll be open-minded. I just don't want people thinking Illustrator style, like giving me things made of circles and squares. You know,
Yeah, because I use like different things. Like I have an iPad that I usually draw on, and then I also have the tablet, the Wacom tablet that I use for this class.
Well, look, if you feel like it doesn't limit your imagination, then you go ahead and draw digitally.
All right, thank you.
My main reason in asking for these to be on paper is for most of us, we think freest on paper, you know, and then use the computer to, you know, zoom in. But I'm kind of open-minded. Any other questions?
Yeah. Do you want a separate page for all of the steps we do and then another one for the layout? Or do you just want us, you know, sketch the steps, you know, somewhat in the shape of the layout on one page?
You know, it's a very fair question. But to be honest, if you all worked for me, you know, let's say we were an agency and I was just the art director, I would say do whatever helps you think clearest. That's all that I would want. I don't want people jumping into finishes before they had time to think visually, visual thinking, you know. So whatever works best for you, Juliana.
Thank you.
Welcome. Your questions are very good. Does anyone else have a question?
I do.
Please, Rebecca.
And usually I work with my iPad and I use Apple Pencil.
Okay.
Is it possible that I can do the sketches on Procreate?
You know, in terms of sketches, I am wide open. Yeah, I'm really wide open how you sketch. Again, my only limitation is don't use any tool that limits the way you imagine.
Okay.
So that's why I'm leaning on paper and pencils, but you know, that's not the same for all of us. You know, maybe pencil's a limitation. I'm okay. The next week, it's going to have to be Adobe Illustrator and the final project. But in terms of thinking, you know, sometimes I think splashing stuff around. I'm a very splashy thinker, you know, with like ink a lot. I use a lot of ink. But sometimes I go right to the computer. I understand. Anyone else?
Thank you.
My pleasure. Anybody else? So guys, listen, I got to say one last thing before you go. I will discuss next week, since we're running, well, we ran out of time, about giving me revisions. But just know that I'm willing to accept revisions from anyone in here who wants to do a revision. Next week, I will tell you how to submit revisions, but that door is going to stay open for quite some time. So even if you want to give me a revision later, I will still accept it. My only worry is that life's going to move on. And at some point, you're going to say, oh, what the hell? I'll just, bear with it. I hated that project, but I'll bear with it. So I'd rather you not do that. So if you feel like the only way you're going to get to it and you're not satisfied your work, or I wasn't, either one of us wasn't, you should probably get busy sooner than later. The door won't shut on my end, but it might shut on yours, that I had it feeling. So if you feel like there's more to do, you should probably do that sooner. Any other questions? Guys, listen, that was fun. I have to say, I saw potential in all of them, and some of them went way beyond potential and already came to fruition. But we have to be patient with each other, right? We're all paying our dues right now. I know you're going to see satisfaction this semester because you're driven, those of you who are. I don't see any slackers at this stage, so there may be none. So we're going to see some real adventure together. All right? I'll see you all next week. It's been a pleasure working with you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm leaving slowly in case anyone has a last-minute question. You're okay, Laura, huh? That was an okay smile. You too, June? Good. I'll see you guys next week.